Joining us to discuss this very issue is Jakub Janda, Director from European Values Center for Security Policy. Hello, sir, and welcome to TVP World.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
So now, perhaps let's first unpack this this meeting, if I may say so. So, what are the main objectives of the EU Foreign Ministers meeting in Luxembourg?
My understanding is that what they really want is to make sure that Hungary cannot basically sabotage the defense of Ukraine. We have seen Hungary, the Hungarian government, being a puppet of Russia and China for many years, unfortunately. And the effort of other EU countries is to make sure that the EU can actually still be actionable and strategically supportive to the Ukraine defenders. So that's why they are looking for how to actually go around Hungarian negative voting, let's say, so that EU can continue in supporting of Ukraine.
Now, what about given also the fact that the accession talks to the Bloc for both Ukraine and Moldova are also set to start? Is there any way that Hungary can torpedo these negotiations?
I'm afraid what we will be seeing from Hungary will be basically stonewalling, sometimes sabotaging, and not putting the key issues on the agenda. That's what the decisions are of the presiding country, the country which is chairing all the EU meetings. So we could expect half a year of, I would call it political propaganda given or provided by the Hungarian government, which unfortunately supports Russia and China, and at the same time kind of avoiding the key issues which are on the table, such as defense of Ukraine or defense of Europe from Chinese interference. So that's what Hungary can do. They can put or not put issues on the agenda of specific ministerial meetings or even working level meetings as well. But it doesn't mean that Hungary is super powerful in that sense. So I'm afraid politically and symbolically it will be pretty ugly. But on the practical level, Hungary cannot really block most of the issues just by itself.
So now I feel like we are talking about an alternative, which is a qualified majority voting system. So what would be the potential risk or benefit of that very system?
This is being discussed for years, and I don't think it will really be moving forward. But in practice, the idea is that for some of the EU decisions, you would not need to have a unanimous vote, like everybody voting yes, but it would only be dependent on just a majority, and we could discuss how a specific majority looks like, how big it needs to be. That's the idea. There are countries which really want this because they are so upset with Hungary blocking so many decisions. But there are countries, including my own Czech Republic, which actually refuse to move away from the unanimous voting on foreign policy because we are afraid that we are pretty much too small, if I put it that way, as smaller countries in the EU, and we are afraid that some of the decisions where we could basically be overpowered, I would say, politically. In the case of Czech Republic, it's specifically, for example, Czech foreign policy or Czech support for State of Israel or Czech support for Taiwan, where we clearly are in a minority in the EU, and that's why, for example, Czech government does not want to accept the changes in the voting regulations.
Now, I'd like to go back for a second to what you were saying previously and the fact that a country that holds the presidency of the European Council can decide on what issues it puts on the agenda, what issues it doesn't. Now, what might be some possible consequences for Hungary if it does makes use of this to obstruct certain EU policies?
I think most of the impact on Hungarian government would be political. So there is already the feeling among most of the EU member states that Hungary is a Trojan horse. It's basically somebody who is inside of our club but working for our main enemy, Russia and China. That's really the understanding is quite clear because Hungarian government behavior has been very clear in recent years. Very practically, what we might see in the future might be the Commission pretty much deciding on, I would say, cutting down some of the EU funding for Hungary as it breaks various parts of the EU laws and EU regulations. That's possible. I think we will see it, but it will not be immediate. because currently the EU leadership is in a process of transition where the new Commission leadership actually needs a support from the Hungarian government because there needs to be a decision on which top jobs of the EU, like the Commission President, High Representative and others, will be positioned and how. So currently it's a very volatile situation. So the pressure on Hungary is not very high at this moment because other European leaders need a Hungarian positive decision or Hungarian vote on some of these personnel nominations.
Now, you mentioned some specific changes that are being considered to bypass Hungary's veto in the EU. And I wonder, how might these procedural changes affect the EU's ability to support Ukraine?
In practice, the thinking is that since Hungary did not actually vote for a specific mechanism for supporting the Ukraine, that Hungary should not have a say in how these resources, how these financial resources would be used in support of Ukraine. That's kind of the legal argument or political and legal argument. We'll see how it holds. To some extent, it's similar to what Hungary has been doing within NATO as well, where we have seen Hungary pretty much abstaining and saying, we are not part of this. We are not part of this specific package for Ukraine, for example, when it comes to military aid through NATO. And that has been pretty much the kind of silent agreement between other member states who want to do it and the Hungarian government who hates to do it or who is told by Russia not to do it. So basically, it could be a win-win situation where Hungary can pretend it's not part of the decision on the EU or NATO level, while the other member states who really want to defend Ukraine and support it can actually say, okay, we push it through. Hungary is horrible, but at least they are not blocking it. So that might be the way forward. It has been used in the past, and I think that's the only way how it might be doable.
All right. Well, Mr. Jakub Janda, Director from the European Values Center for Security Policy, thank you very much for your insight and sharing your thoughts here with us on TVP World this morning.
Thank you for having me.